welcome to the Voices of Santa Barbara radio program. I'm your host, Michael Self, inviting you to stay tuned to today's conversation. I have three guests. We're all fellow Rotarians. We have Bill Dutton, we have Don Jack, and we have Steve Peterson. And they've been longtime Rotarians. And what we're going to be talking about is their recent trip to Guatemala. Welcome aboard, guys.
Thank you, Michael. Our pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Okay, Bill, where do you hail from?
Where do I hail from? Southern California. I was born in Hollywood and lived in the general area ever since then, and moved to the Santa Barbara area in about 20 years ago.
And your occupation?
What brought me to Santa Barbara was I was executive director of the American Red Cross for the Santa Barbara County. And that brought me here, and I was with Red Cross for 35 years. Okay.
And you have received numerous awards, too many to mention here, from Rotary for your exemplary service and getting involved. You're past president, and so welcome. We're going to be talking about Guatemala, but first we want to hear from Steve Peterson.
Well, hello, Michael. I'm a native Santa Barbara. I've been here all my life. My father had an automobile dealership, and I grew up in the automobile business, and then graduated from that to go into accounting, and eventually became an owner of the tile collection in Santa Barbara. I've been a Rotary for 19 years now, and it's been a great 19 years. It's hard for me to believe it's been that long, but I love every minute of it.
Well, and you're a past president also, and very enthusiastic. I'd like to give a side story about that. We were at your house once, and my husband, John, has a 1969 Alfa Romeo that in the conversation, that was one of the marks sold at the agency where your folks were. And you said, well, I bet you bought it from me. So when we got home, John found the bill of sale, and sure enough, at that time, it was prior computer doing everything. So we have your wet signature on that contract and John still has the car.
Yeah, so. And he sent me a copy of it. It was quite a kick. Because I signed off on that one in 1969.
Right. So I've always said, if you do something in Santa Barbara, make sure it's upstanding, because it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay, Don, give us a little history about
let's
yourself.
Say a little bit about myself. I was born in Wisconsin and lived there until I was about 14 years old. And then, thankfully, my parents decided to move to California in 1964, so I've been in the Santa Barbara area since then. Spent my entire career, my working career, with Raytheon Company, and I was operations manager with Raytheon, local Raytheon facility, when I retired in 2010, and have been doing volunteer work since then. And got introduced to Rotary I'm the newbie here, got introduced to Rotary in 2015. I heard about a trip to West Africa that Rotary was doing, and hadn't really been that much aware of the international aspect of Rotary, and I did that trip, joined the local Santa Barbara Rotary Club of Santa Barbara, and have been enjoying my time with Rotary ever since.
Well, and your history is why you are so detailed. Everything you get involved in is very correct. You you were forced in to be treasurer for a bit, so we could get somebody to help you with that. But you're always a good sport, and I know the club really appreciates it. And so now you're part of the check-in team and the whatever team. So really appreciate all your help. And so let's talk about your recent trip to Guatemala. And and Bill, since you're the old timer here, no pun intended, is that is when did Rotary start going to Guatemala, and how did we find it? I believe it was through you.
Yes, it was, and we started really 7 years ago. At that time, we were looking, probably 8 years ago, I was part of the Rotary's International Special Projects Committee, and that committee is looking for activities and projects to do in various places in the world. In addition to Santa Barbara itself, and the club does a lot of local community service, but most Rotary clubs around the world also do things on an international level and are always looking for projects to do. And so I happened to hear about the need in Guatemala around that time through my church, which is Unity Church of Santa Barbara, and they've now become partners with us on our trips when we go down, and also fundraising efforts as we head down. And so anyway, we found out about Mayan families through that, and they had been an organization that had been around since 2007 at that point, and so we thought it might be a good match. And also the founders of the nonprofit that we go down to visit in Guatemala were Rotarians down there as well. So we felt it was a good match, and we were also looking for a project that we could fairly easily get to with a short flight, hopefully. And so we found that in Guatemala as well, as we can fly into there from LAX in about a 4.5-hour direct flight. So that worked out well, and we've enjoyed our visits the last 7 years, and I'm sure as we go on in this interview, we will tell you more about what we did and the various projects that we were involved with.
Good. Steve, tell us about that cute little Guatemalan cutie you found down there.
She's a little kick. I guess it was my second trip down. I've been down there 6 times now. I missed one because of a surgery in the family, but I think it was my second trip down there, and we were visiting a preschool, and one room was kids doing artwork and showing us their artwork, and the second room was kids put on a little skit for us, and they did singing and dancing, and I looked over to my left, and here's this cute little girl on top of a desk or on top of a table, excuse me, and she was dancing away, and she had little piggy tails and a pink dress on, and she was just smiling, and she had a beautiful smile. And at the time, they were telling us about doing sponsoring kits for school down there, and school and meals and a few other things that benefit them. The reason they're going to school is the Mayan kids they speak Quechua, which is, they don't speak Spanish. So they're going primarily to school to learn Spanish so they can go on to school and eventually get into the real world of working, not just in the fields where most of the people work. So I ended up sponsoring this little girl. It took a little work, but I got there and I sponsored her, and now she's been my little girl down there for the last 6 years. And I get to visit her every time I go down, and every time it's just wonderful. And she's growing up, and she's doing fairly well in school, although she struggles, as most of the kids do. And she's a lot of fun. She's got full of personality, and I enjoy every minute I get to spend with her.
I remember when you were wanting to sponsor that child, and they have a booklet with the pictures of all of the kids. And you said, no, the one in pink with the little piggy tails, that one.
That's right. Yep.
And then since then, you've put windows in their, the homes are concrete block, usually. They can be just tin,
usually, yes,
or reeds. But hers was concrete block, and so you put windows in. I believe you put a cement floor in too, didn't you?
Yes, we did eventually. I was fortunate I was able to get some support from my Rotary Club and other Rotarians to donate some money plus my own, and what had happened, her father had an accident and passed away, and he had been building the house for him. They actually have a pretty good house for the Mayan families. They've got a 3-room house, which is pretty unusual. But the windows never got put in, and the doors didn't get put on, and they had a dirt floor. So, yeah, all those things happened. We also put one of the stoves in that we purchased for Mayan families down there, which is concrete block and steel, and it has a chimney, which is great because it gets the smoke out of the house. And
right.
For health purposes,
well, we're going to be
wonderful.
talking more about what we do in a lot of the homes, and you've been really great for this family. And right now, you're listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Self on KZSB AM 1290, the Santa Barbara News Press radio station. We'll be back with more about Guatemala and my 3 guests, Don Jack, Steve Peterson, and Bill Dutton after these messages. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. And my 3 guests today are Don, Steve, and Bill, to make it simple. And we've been talking about Rotary, and one of the projects that Rotary does a lot locally, but this particular is the International Special Projects. And Bill was talking about that, and Steve was talking about his little girl in pink with the pigtails, and for her family. And Don, why don't you bring us up to date about some of the other things that we do when we're in Rotary? And this money is donated by the Rotary Club. And we can always use help. So take it away, Don.
Yeah, and if you'd like to get more information about the Santa Barbara Rotary Club, you can go to santabarbararotary.com. That's santabarbararotary.com. There are several things that we do when we do these trips down to Guatemala. We're in a small town in the surrounding region. The small town is called Panajachel, and it is on the shores of a lake called Lake Atitlan, which is a lake, a very large lake, I think the second largest in Central America. The population in that area is indigenous Mayan, so they speak Mayan languages and are at a disadvantage because of that and because of a 36-year civil war that went on between 1960 and 1996. So the need for a whole variety of projects is pretty strong. We do stove installations. So one of the things that Mayan Families has been providing to the indigenous population with support from donors like the Rotary Club of Santa Barbara and Unity Church of Santa Barbara is high efficiency stoves. Deforestation is a problem in Guatemala, and people typically who spend a large portion of their day searching out wood. And so there is a stove called the O'Neill stove, ONIL. It was developed by a mechanical engineer in Texas by the name of O'Neill, different spelling. And it is 70% more efficient than the conventional stoves being used by the people down there. So it reduces the amount of time searching for wood. It reduces the cost of buying wood. It also improves the indoor air quality because the traditional fires are right inside the houses and there's no venting or anything. So the O'Neill stoves that are less than $200 a piece will take care of a variety of health issues for people so they don't have to breathe the unhealthy air. We also do this is my favorite. We do construction projects. So every year we do one or two build either houses or additions to houses for people that Mayan families has identified. This year we did 2 additions to houses, basically reinforced concrete block construction. And so we both pay for the construction and we give what is sometimes symbolic participation and support for the construction project. But
what do you mean symbolic?
What do you mean? All those blisters were symbolic?
Yeah.
The back liniment carrying those blocks, digging the trenches for the footings. Oh no, I think it's a little more than symbolic.
Yeah, they generally have us do the menial work, if you will. So we do things like carrying building materials where we can't do too much damage, carrying blocks or sand. A couple of years we have sifted sand, and here you would just go out and buy, for example, plaster sand in a bag or whatever. Down there, people actually mine, if that's the right word, sand and gravel out of the riverbed, and then it's delivered to the construction site. And you actually do the sifting of the sand at the construction site, which is a different sort of experience. And one which to me is significant because one of the 2 children that I sponsor, when I read his bio, his father works pulling sand and gravel manually with a shovel out of the riverbed in Panajachel. So he's at the bottom of the social hierarchy, and I knew when I saw that description that the boy needed support. So we've had our share of sifting sand and mixing concrete, mixing mortar, and bending rebar and re-rod and so forth. But it's good work, and it lets us communicate with people and see where the money is going. Another aspect of what we do is elderly projects and crafts projects and so forth. And Bill, you're probably more familiar with that because I know your wife, Bonnie, has over the many years been very active in those areas.
That's right. When we go down, my wife Bonnie goes down with us. She really doesn't want to do anything in the construction side, but she loves doing things in arts and crafts. So Mayan Families, the NGO that we work with, has preschools at various locations around the lake. And so she brings down with her arts and crafts supplies. And so she goes into the classroom and works with the teacher and kind of assists and provides arts and crafts, which the kids just love. And that's into the preschools. And in addition to that, several years ago, she also got involved with the elderly program, which they have down there for a nutrition program, which they feed the elderly, but they also do arts and crafts projects with them as well. So it's really a good opportunity to be one-on-one with the students or the elderly population. And,
and this is something, if anyone is interested in any of these specific issues, you can donate money and dedicate it for, say, elder care. And part of the reason, my understanding is that because you have big families, you have maybe grandma is left over, and you know, where do the resources go? The resources usually go for the younger people. And so grandma is kind of last person on the totem pole to get fed, but they have feeding centers. They also, at these feeding centers, if grandma can't make it down, a family member brings down a pail and like a lunchbox and gets their food for them. So it's
that's right.
Really
this year we had the pleasure of bringing on board a new facility for taking care of the elderly in one of the villages away from Panajachel.
That was in Santa Maria El Tablon.
Yep.
And Steve was part of the opening of that intergenerational center that was there.
Oh, wonderful.
That was
that's
pretty
great.
fun because they had a group of elderly there, and then they had a dedication for the facility, and then we participated in some crafts and had lunch with them, and then they played music and everybody got up and danced. Well, they came and asked us to dance, and I danced with a man that was about half my height. And
they're all about half
men
your
dancing
height.
with men and women dancing with women. It was very interesting and enlightening.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. Well, we're going to need to take another break. And so this is Voices of Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Self on KZSB AM 1290, the Santa Barbara News Press radio station. And we'll be back with more about Guatemala and these fine gentlemen after these messages. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. My three guests today are Bill, Don, and Steve, and we've been talking about Guatemala. I've been there 3 times and also sponsor a child there. And I remember when we first started sponsoring that we decided that we would sponsor all the children from the same village, which is Tierra Linda. And Tierra Linda is high in the mountains. You look down on the San Francisco River where they're making little rocks out of big rocks. And but we decided that we would cluster together so that if one wasn't able to go, that the others could visit our children and take some helpful things for them. And so I believe, Steve, you were responsible this year for toting the bags, and I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay.
It's fun. It's fun trying to get all that stuff in suitcases.
Yes. Tried not to make it too heavy. But anyway, okay, so what else do we do down there? We just finished. Is there anything else we want to bring up about the elder program?
Well, as we mentioned, there's a new elder program that just opened up in the Santa Maria El Tablon area, and Mayan Families is also looking at some other areas to open up as well because that's such a great need. Malnutrition is one of the major problems in that area, in Guatemala, in the particular area that we go to. And
right.
Currently there's over 67% of the children under 5 suffer from malnutrition. And
right.
Guatemala has the 4th highest malnutrition rate in the world. So that's certainly one of the areas. So one of the things we also do is we've brought food baskets when we go visit in the various towns. And this year we had 5 food baskets that we provided for families in various locations. And when we say that, the reason why is generally most of the people work if they can find jobs and do not make much, a few dollars maybe per day. And so when you have a large family, it's very difficult for them to be able to put enough food on the table for everyone. So certainly nutrition is a major emphasis, and education is also a major emphasis of Mayan Families as well. So working really from preschool through the elderly. Something that we have done
also is provide chickens and feed, because eggs seem to be their major source of protein, and as long as the chicken is able to give eggs, they feed the chicken, and then at the end of that, then they eat the chicken.
Yep.
So supplying that food source, they do have a lot of agriculture in that area, but
particularly up in the Tierra Linda, which you were speaking
right.
of earlier. Yeah,
right. Well, what are some of the other I know that they do microloans, which are typically for women to open these little snack stands.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, one of the new things that we've done this year is supporting a tutoring program. And because so many of the children in their home environment speak one of the 21 Mayan languages, typically Cachacal, but it could be something else, they have difficulty with Spanish, and as a result, they have difficulty in schools. So we are providing, the Rotary Club of Santa Barbara is providing support for a tutoring program with 2 tutoring centers, one in Tierra Linda that we were talking about, and another down in Panajachel. And the tutoring centers use university students who are majoring in education, gives them a chance for some practical experience, and also provides a role model for the students. Currently, the tutoring program is providing for students who are in the elementary grades, and there is a new change that's currently being implemented to start adding middle school students with the intent of keeping them in school, because typically middle school students have a very high attrition rate. They drop out of school when they're in middle school, and it will also incorporate the middle school students into the teaching aspect of the program, so they'll not only be students in the tutoring program, but also will help tutor the younger children. So we're very excited about that.
And I might add that the reason why that tutoring program started was because of Don, and he applied for a Rotary District grant, District 5240 grant, and received money for that, which our club also matched. So
Right. So this was from Rotary International, who also provided money for this, because normally it's our club and friends we know who support our cause who help us. But was this from our area or higher up?
It was a district grant from the District 5240, which covers large portion of the Tri-Counties and goes from the coast all the way to Bakersfield.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for doing that. I know we've been just sort of stuttering about that for a while in our club. Well, you have to take the class, you have to do this, you have to do that, and hooray for you doing that. They're much appreciated. And who would like to talk about...
I was going to say that was the outgrowth of a conversation Bill and I had a year ago with the Mayan families personnel about what their real needs are, an area where they could use additional support. And they identified the tutoring as being essential to keeping the students in school.
Well, and some of them, like in Tierra Linda, it's agriculture, and been by where to see the little girl that my daughter and her husband sponsor, and they called her up from the field. So even though she's being sponsored, the family needs that help. And so, having a tutor who can encourage them to stay in school and get that. We're going to take another break, and then when we come back, if you could tell us the other services that Mayan Family does and what its purpose is above and beyond just teaching Spanish. And so right now you're listening to Voices of Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Self on KZSB AM 1290, the Santa Barbara News Press radio station. We'll be back with more about Guatemala, why Mayan families, what their mission is, and these, I get choked up. Anyway, thank you guys. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB. AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. My three guests today are Bill, Don, and Steve, and we've been talking about Rotary and its international special projects, one of which, this is not the only international project, but one of which is taking an annual trip to Guatemala, and I believe it's 9 days?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's during the good time of year to visit. And so, and one of the things that I want to make clear is that everybody pays their own way. They pay their flight, they pay their meals, they pay their housing. Rotary does not sponsor volunteers to go. This is people who really care. So,
well, one good thing about Rotary is every dollar that is donated to Rotary goes back out into a community or an international project. There's no overhead costs at all for any of these dollars that come in.
Right. Well, one of the things I appreciated when I was down there is that they are trying to get the young people educated and able to better navigate the country they're in, but they're not taking away their culture. They have their Indian dress. Different villages have different attire, and but I really like that they want their traditional music and dress and customs to be preserved. They're not trying to Americanize them. So,
not at all.
What else? What else do they do? I know they have several different divisions of Mayan family that specialize in different skills. Who wants to talk about that?
Well, I can jump in, Michael, for a second. Another thrust is in the area of health. There is a doctor who goes down, an American doctor who goes down and volunteers his time about 6 months out of the year. And they're also, Mayan Families is also looking to hire a physician because health issues are really the key to the population. They've got a lot of health issues, as you might expect. And on a related note, they do. There is a nursing student who we know well by the name of Rosa, who does teaches classes in women's health and women's health-related issues, and maybe opens the eyes of some of the women in terms of what their options might be, and even simple things about how pregnancy happens and so forth that we take for granted.
Yes, there is a women's health initiative in which they try and get the women involved to learn more about their health, nutrition, as well as sex education, which is added as part of that. That's kind of an ongoing program that Mayan Families does have. And one of the things they will be adding this year, which will be brand new, in addition to the medical clinic, which has just hired on a new indigenous doctor, which is great, that comes from the area. Yeah. Will also be a new dental clinic that will start up this next year. So that's one of the new programs.
Well, and when you're talking about health, one of the things that you hear about worldwide is clean water, and so parasites can be a problem. And what do you guys do about that?
Well, we provide water filters, and that is, as you mentioned, Michael, that is a major problem down there. 40% of the country lacks access to water and sanitation systems, and we see that when we're visiting in each of the villages and the homes. But we do have some water filters. This year, we provided 8 families with water filters, which provides clean water for them. So that is one of the programs that we have done for many years now, the 7 years that we have gone down. And
and one of the things that I respect about Mayan Families, okay, you're there 9 days, you leave, right?
Right.
But Mayan Families, this group, they will make sure that the people who are getting the filters or the stoves know how to keep them operational longer, how to tend to them.
That's
and even the families that are selected, they have kind of like a little social services group that will make sure that the family that's been selected is how do you say this? Not derelict, not not criminal, not
Right.
you know.
Well, they just monitor the really what we donate is a water filter to that family, and they monitor
Right.
to make sure that it's being used correctly and that it's cleaned out. There's a certain procedure in terms of how often it needs to be cleaned and that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay, I sidetracked you again. So what other educational type services does Mayan Family, through our money, do for the community?
Well, they also have trade schools. In fact, it's called the Rotary Trade School because of a Rotary Club in Ohio that purchased a lot of the equipment. And that came, and there's a wood shop, which, and this is more for adults now. Most of the educational programs are for youth, but this one is for the adults. And so they have a wood shop. They also have sewing classes, computer classes, and
recently they added a welding shop too. So
oh yes, and the welding
they
shop.
can learn to weld.
Yeah. And so these are to help the adults in terms of with a vocation for them as well. So trade schools have been very successful and put people to work.
Good. I wish we had more trade schools in the United States, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's nice to have another skill rather than a sledgehammer making little rocks out of big rocks.
Yes.
And
yep. They have an opportunity to make a much better living with these skills than they do working in the fields.
Well, they have this very elaborate embroidery work that they do, and which was really popular, in the 60s? And in fact, I think that was the original founders of Mayan Families. They were importers, where they were importing these Guatemalan trendy fabrics up there to the United States. And then they started to see, well, there's really a lot of need here. But when you say a sewing machine, they're computerized sewing machines.
Some of them are, yes. And usually what happens with the women that graduate out of the sewing school, in fact, they're currently during this pandemic, is they're making masks. And one of the fundraising projects that's currently going on for Mayan Families is for $5 you can purchase a mask, and and that will come to the United States, but takes about 10 days to 2 weeks to get here. But that is one of the programs in which the women do make money since they've graduated, and they continue to sew throughout the year. There's also an artisan program that works with more craft-related things, with beads and that kind of thing, so that you can purchase items that way.
Yeah, right. Phil, you were able to get out of the beading this year, but we had a demonstration on beading, and Don and I were involved with putting these little bitty beads on a string. It was definitely a challenge for older eyes and older hands. And to watch the native people do it, it's unbelievable. They can bead so quickly and create beautiful work in no time.
Yeah, it gave us a real appreciation. We run into street vendors when we're down there who sell little beaded hummingbirds and that sort of thing, and for not much money, maybe $1 or something. And actually trying to do it ourselves gave us a new appreciation for how much work actually goes into those things.
Yes. Yeah, in fact,
you missed that one, Michael.
I had bought things and brought them back, and then people in our club bought them. I use them as ornaments for trees. And you're listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara. I'm Michael Self on KZSB AM 1290, the Santa Barbara News Press radio station. We'll be back with more about Guatemala and our three guests after these messages. Welcome back to Voices of Santa Barbara at KZSB AM 1290, the News Press radio station. I'm your host, Michael Self, with a reminder that this program will be rebroadcast again tonight at 8 and Sunday at 10 a.m. And my three guests today are Don, Steve, and Bill. And we've been talking about Rotary's international special projects that they're doing in Guatemala. We only have a few minutes left, so what would you guys like to get out there that we maybe didn't cover? Let's start with Bill.
One thing I'd like to say, Michael, is if somebody wants to contact our Rotary Club, they can go to either SantaBarbaraRotary.com. Santa Barbara Rotary is all one word. Or send an email to Santa Barbara Rotary Club at gmail.com. Santa Barbara Rotary Club at gmail.com. And Rotary is an organization that's in 130 countries with over 1 million members.
Yeah. Yep. Do a lot of good works. And when I first got there, I didn't realize it was philanthropic. I got there because it was a nice group and I had a lot of fun. And I still enjoy the group very much. And so, Bill, what didn't we talk about that we should?
Well, let me give you an overview of what we did this last year. I mean, we've talked about them in general and so forth, and let me tell you what we did.
Okay.
Our budget for the year was we brought down total fundraising of $18,430. And for that, we have provided 13 stoves that we've been discussing. We've worked on building construction of two homes, one in Chukmunk and the other one in Panajachel. And we provided 8 water filters this year. Elderly feeding, we did 2 of those. Preschools, arts and crafts and so forth, we did 2 of those visits. And food baskets, we did 5. As Don already mentioned, we have continued to do the tutoring grant, and that was a pilot project this year that was started by our Rotary Club, and that will hopefully continue in the future as well. And so we've had a very successful year, and as I mentioned, that we've also, in the 7 years that we've been there, I was looking this morning to see how much we have done. And we provided services for over $94,000 in projects down there in the 7 years that we have gone down. And we've had each year between 6 and 16 people from Santa Barbara that have gone down with us.
Yeah, it's really a great trip. And, thank you for continuing this. And, they really need it, and really thankful.
And if anyone's interested, they can certainly contact any of us through the Rotary Club of Santa Barbara. And we will be planning a trip for next year, and we already have the dates selected for February the 20th through the 28th, 2021. And
that's a red eye.
Yeah, yes. Although anyone can go down at any time they wish, but we tend to do a red eye that goes down there for most of the group, but it's not required because some people want to do tourist activities either before our volunteer activities with Mayan families or afterwards. And so it's mainly 9 days, but it could be more if somebody wants to do that.
Yeah, some people have gone down earlier and done sightseeing in Guatemala City.
That's right.
And I believe on the way back to the beautiful hotel that houses us before we fly home, are you still going to Antigua?
Yes, we are. Yep. Yes, and this year we met up with a member of the Carpinteria Morning Club that has in essence like a satellite club in Antigua. And so we got to meet up with another Rotarian in Antigua this year, which was very nice, which Don helped arrange.
That was good because one of the days I think, one time we went zip lining. That was fun.
Oh yeah, that was a kick. Yep.
So,
we do get one day off down there to just kind of enjoy, and you ladies like to go shopping a lot. So
yes.
To bring goodies home and share with other people.
Right. Yeah. No, it's they have beautiful work. I remember the woman following me around the thing saying, my friend. And I want to thank you for listening to the Voices of Santa Barbara on KZSB AM 1290. I'm Michael Self, and I want to thank Bill, Don, and Steve for taking time out to record this. Thank you, guys.